stop choosing backing tracks that just go circle and circle and circle around and have no obvious end in sight, because, as I'm sure you guys are aware, I'll play and I won't stop. It's like that scene in Anchorman where it's like, what do they say? It's if you put it on the auto cue, Burgundy will read it. Well, you put the backing track on, Jennison will play over it. Hi guys, how you doing? Nick Jennison with Guitar Interactive GI+. It's Monday. We're continuing our deep discussion on the subject of arpeggios, but of course we're also doing the thing that we do on Mondays, which is hang out and talk about the guitar. Today, the red guitar is back in action. I've had an en masse restring of my guitars. I have done so many guitars, did them all over the weekend, and let me tell you, it feels nice, right? Some of these strings have been on for over a year, which is kind of disgusting, but weirdly, they all still kind of worked, which was kind of strange. So, been using these Ernie Ball Paradigms for a good while. I'm just going to fish a set out and flash them at you, because why not? I've actually gone back to the pink strings this time around, because I've been having a little bit of I guess a little bit of maybe technique issue isn't the thing, but I've been kind of struggling a little bit with the 10s, and I've also had a little bit of wrist pain. I think that is probably because I've had a long layoff of not playing a whole lot, and then I've just come back to playing tons in an attempt to get my chops back, and it's just a little too much too soon. So we've gone back to the 9s, and I think they sound fantastic. We'll get back onto that. It's another story for another day. If you want to talk about strings, we can talk about strings, but that's not the thing we're here to do. So if you're a new viewer, if you're tuning in for the first time, want to take this opportunity to welcome you. I don't always clash with the backdrop as much as I am today. Thought we'd have a go of GI orange and purple, and what a time to bring the red guitar to clash horribly with the orange in the backdrop, but that's okay. So yeah, you're a first time viewer, thanks for tuning in. My name's Nick Jennison. It's good to have you. We're doing a live guitar lesson today. If you're one of our regular kind of community of streamers, great to have you back. Speaking of which, we're going to tune in with you guys in just a second. The comment section is already going. We got some discussion of a young guitar player who I think we can all agree is probably up there as a contender for Future of the Guitar Award, but we'll get to that. Also, a couple of quick things, by the way, before we do, a little bit of housekeeping. If you want to help us keep the lights on, literally and metaphorically and all that good stuff, Sacred Godslayer, French flag, Jennison. Right, listen, it's orange and it's purple. I promise it's not the French flag, unless it's like a colorblind French flag. Maybe I'll make them the French flag in the break, though, because that's hilarious. Maybe we'll do different nations' flags in over the course of the next few streams. Anyway, yeah, a couple of ways you can help us keep the lights on, literally and metaphorically. You can go to this URL down here where you can go and get some lessons on GI+. That's where we host all of our courses. It also helps us to keep doing these streams. Your GI+ subscription, and of course your comments and your likes, your subscribes, all that sort of stuff, are the things that enable us to keep giving you these live streams. So if you want to support us, that's the place to go do it. Also, you can give us a thumbs up on whatever platform you're watching on. You can drop us a like if you're on Facebook. You can like this video if you're on YouTube, and you can share this with your guitar playing friends. That's a big deal, right? We've noticed that shares really do help us reach the most guitar players. So if you have a guitar playing friend in your life that you think would benefit from the sort of stuff we're doing today, please share the video with them. That would be greatly appreciated. Anyway, let's get stuck in with the stream. Marcin has regained his crown as the first one through the door. It's good to see you, man. I will say as well, by the way, I saw those photo shoot pictures on Facebook. They look fantastic. Like looking really dashing with that PRS. Let me tell you, it's a good looking guitar, but they're good looking guitars. You know, we know that already. Foghornish is in the house. Good to have you on board. Daryl Queen is here, potentially from work. Who knows? We discovered that last week. Mark Crandall is in the house, and this is where the discussion begins. So it says, hey Nick, hey guys, hope everyone's doing well. Do you know this kid, Matteo Mancuso? He is an amazing electric finger picking monster. If you don't know him, check him out, right? So for you guys in the comments, right, if you don't know, or if you're just viewing this in the playback or whatever, if you don't know who Matteo Mancuso is, at the end of this video, make sure you go and check him out, because this dude is like, he represents kind of an evolutionary step in not just technique but also musicality on the guitar. He's frightening, and I think one day we're going to be speaking about Matteo Mancuso in the same terms that we speak about Guthrie Govan right now. Such is how awed I am with the guy. There's a bunch of guitar players, young guitar players, doing this sort of thing. To my shame, I can't remember the name of one of the guys, but he has utterly flawless technique, and it's just wonderful, like just beautiful, and he makes music with it as well. Max Ostro is another one. The guitar is in good hands, man, especially the like high chops, don't even know what you call it, like that upper end of like technical guitar playing. I don't like that term because I feel like that does a disservice to how good these guys are as musicians. But yeah, Matteo is something else, and he has this kind of classical fingerstyle type technique, which is just utterly outrageous. I don't know how he got so good so young, but hey, there you go. He's going to do us all out of jobs, but that'll be fine. Larry Warren's here. Larry, it's good to see you. I think we saw Larry last week on Lick Library stream as well, if I'm not mistaken. He's amazing on acoustic too. I can believe this. I can believe this. Daryl Queen says, hey Mark, I do know that, and that guy is frighteningly good. Totally agree. Totally agree. Just outrageous. David Yates, here's some good news. David Yates says, evening Nick and evening guys. I'm back in the saddle with my thin strings and my Nick Jennison. I get that autocorrect all the time too. Approved low action. Good man, I am on a lighter set of strings and I still have my usual low action. For anybody who's wondering, by the way, the action we're talking about is a 1mm action on the treble side and a 1.5mm action on the bass side. This may seem quite low if you look at some of the specs that guitars tend to ship with, but if you look at the setups of a lot of pro guitar players, certainly a lot of like the shred guys, or the old school shred guys at least, you look at the way like Eddie Van Halen had his guitar set up, Steve Vai has his guitar set up, John Petrucci, Satch, like all of these kind of golden era shred guitar players, they all seem to have roughly the same measurements, which is kind of interesting. So that's the measurements I go for. Requires some very good fret work. Luckily this guitar and all of my guitars are immaculately maintained by my friend Paul Richardson, who does all of my fretwork, puts stainless steel frets in for me when I wear the nickel ones out, which is inevitable. I don't really have a preference in terms of tone, but in terms of longevity, stainless steel all the way, and that allows me to keep my action nice and low. But more importantly, I want to take this opportunity to say, David, it's great to have you back with the guitar in your hands. I know you've been suffering lately, but man, these things are never permanent. You know, it's good that you're able to play again. We love a bit of that. We got some love for Matteo in the comments. Whole band is amazing. Totally agree. Totally agree. This is a gig I'm gonna have to go and check out. Easy for me to say. There's a trio video. Looks like an evening performance in Sicily on YouTube. It's staggering. I will be checking that out. Well, there we go. Right. So that's what we're looking for. So yeah, man. Something else. Let's see who else is here anyway. Steve McDee's here. Steve, it's good to see you. Crank Tom is back in Germany. Good to see you. I'm sorry the travels have ended, but I'm sure you'll be roaming the globe again very soon. On the plus side, you get to use your actual gear instead of using your Smart Mini, which is cool. We like Smart Minis. They're great. I take them out whenever I'm out and about. If I have a guitar and I just want to go traveling, that's what I'll take with me. But hey, man, it's good to have you in all the same. Response Audio is here. A recent, I guess not that recent. I guess you've been with us for a good few weeks, man. But listen, it's lovely to have you on board. A very welcome addition to our community. Cowcat is here. Hey, boys, who is this Mancuso? Oh, wait, the one that can put 95% of guitar players out of a job. Listen, right, my only... the only thing that gives me hope in this situation is that he can only be in one place at once. So, you know, as long as there are at least 2 guitar jobs going in the world at any given time, I don't feel quite so bad. Nick the Pick is in action. That's a term that I'm gonna use. I like that. Very, very cool. If I was giving myself a nickname, maybe that's what I would pick. But my friend Craig is here. Well, Nick, the hairy Geordie Greek. That's a long story. What's on the menu? What's up, chat? Good to see you. Great to have you on board. Craig, I'll try and play those Rise and Force arpeggios today. Who knows? Actually, maybe we'll do the other one that we've been talking about. We've been discussing arpeggios to and from in Facebook, and it's cool. We love that. Steve Ford is in the house. Steve, it's good to see you. Ergo Hog is here. Timothy Appling is here. Nick makes it look effortless. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. I think it's the lighter strings. I think it feels a little more effortless today than it normally does. PRS Day. Every day is PRS Day, and you know it, man. Unless we're doing acoustics, every day is PRS Day. Your apparent lack of tension in your fretting hand is something I'm striving for. Thanks, man. Maybe we'll talk about that. I appreciate that. Maybe we'll chat about it, because that's an interesting thing that we probably need to discuss. That's the name I was looking for, right? Is it Josh Meader or is it Josh Meander? I'm not sure. Hedros Ramos is another one. Another fabulous guitar player. So on subject of action, summer in Italy means action is not your friend. I can well believe, man, for you guys who don't know, I'm not going to say the action, but your neck relief moves depending upon what's going on with the climate. So in most temperate, let's say most temperate kind of places, you would do yourself well to check your neck relief every 3 months, maybe 6 months, maybe give it a little adjustment. These guitars are pretty stable. I can normally go quite a long time without having to adjust them, but if I travel and I go from a cold place to a warm place, that's the first thing I need to look at, which is one of the reasons why I never have my truss rod covers on. I used to also play in a band that used like old school par cans. I don't know if you guys have ever played under old par lights, but they're the hottest things in the world. You've no idea. So I'd come out the van in winter, and then by the time my guitar was like, by the time I was on stage, the guitar's action had moved because the truss rod had moved from like winter climate to like par cans. So I got in this habit of leaving my truss rod covers off. It's probably not ideal, certainly doesn't look great, but I like to be able to get in there and adjust with as little fuss as possible. I've also had this before where I've traveled to another country to play and I get that horrible thing where the first fret doesn't work. So it's one of the perils of having an action that lives on a knife edge. So anyway, listen, we'll talk about string action and string gauge and all that stuff a little bit more as we go on. But first, got a couple of questions for you, right? A couple of questions for you on this one. First one is, I'm going to ask guitar players of a particular age, right? This is a Mandela effect thing. You guys know about the Mandela effect. It's where you have kind of an event in history that, you feel like it occurred, but maybe you just remembered it wrong. So I want to know, right, from you guys, when did tens become the standard string gauge? Because when I was a kid, when I was growing up, I remember nines being on everything. Literally every guitar had nines, and you would put tens on if you were like, if you needed to. That was like the step up. But I don't know what happened. Some point in the the last decade or so, it became a thing where tens were the standard gauge. And I know lots of guitar players now who are kind of the opinion that it was always the standard gauge. I want to know when you noticed the change from nines to tens being the standard gauge, if you noticed at all. Don't know, just one of the things that's been on my mind. So that's a question. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about that. But we're going to get on to the meat of today's session, which is arpeggios. So we're continuing our discussion on arpeggios. We've done loads of arpeggio stuff today, and what I thought would be fun to do would be to get a little bit more into application, because we've done a lot of theory stuff over the last few weeks. I thought it'd be fun to get a little bit more into the application side of things and start talking about some arpeggio. I've called them arpeggio chains because that's how I like to think about them, but we can think about them as arpeggio sequences too. So we're going to start by asking the question, right? What's your favorite solo? Your favorite solo that features a very obvious arpeggio sequence. And what I don't mean by this is the like the big, like, crazy sweepy Jason Becker arpeggios. I mean something along the lines of the Sultans of Swing arpeggio, which is like this sort of thing. So something relatively, I'm not going to say something simpler, because that's not really what it is, but using smaller arpeggios, right? We've all got favorite solos. Me and my friend Craig were talking about this, right? So he mentioned the Final Countdown, right? This is a really great shout. I'm going to find the comment up here, because it's something we chatted about a few days ago, and it kind of got me thinking about this sort of stuff. So it's one of them solos, right? I can't find the comment. He has dropped in here. There we go. Well, it's now the Final Countdown. There you go, right? It's a great song, and one of the solos is absolutely fabulous, right? But or it's one of the solos that is absolutely fabulous, but it has this really, like, familiar don't know what the blues lick is exactly, but the arpeggios. That's an example of kind of what I'm talking about here. And this is kind of a fast and fairly shreddy example, but some other examples we've got in the comments, we're just going to touch on these right now. The first one came through from Sacred Godslayer. This is the answer I was hoping you guys would give, which is Hotel California. So I don't know if you knew about this already. I'm sure you guys probably did, but the guitar solo from Hotel California, super famous. I can't play it for you. I can't play it for you because it'll get this video demonetized, even with me just playing it. It'll get us blocked, so we don't want that. It says, I tip my hat to you, you nailed that. Thanks, man. I bluffed it, right? But it just goes to show what we were talking about the other day, where if you kind of know the arpeggio shapes and you know the song, then there you go. But Hotel California is a great example that I can't play for you because it'll get us blocked, but even still, it's a fine example. I don't know if you guys knew that. The solo from Hotel California, certainly the harmony part, is constructed entirely of arpeggios, or largely of arpeggios anyway, so that's a really, really great shout. Cracker Tom says Miracle Man, that's a fantastic call, right? Great song as well. Foghorn says Play With Me, Nuna Betancourt solo, a really, really great example, right? Really great example. Let's see if I can remember this one as well, actually. What's the first bit go like? Oh, it's been a while. Where's it go from there? Something like that. Something like that. It's been a long time since I played that one. That's a really, really good shout, right? Another great shout. What else do we have? Oh, here we go. Bark at the Moon. And yeah, superb, right? Really great one. I'm guessing you mean the bit at the end, which is that. Oh, that really weird stretch. Jake, you must have had hands like shovels, right? I could play it the normal way, but that's no fun. The beginning of Malmsteen's Rising Force solo. This is one that I keep fluffing, right? I keep playing it wrong. But I'm going to have a go anyway. This... whatever it goes like. Wherever it goes from there, I don't know. I need to practice that one because that's not a bluffer one, even though I'm getting dared to do it in the comments. Again, I always make a mess of that one for whatever reason. So what we can hear from this, right, is that this whole business of these arpeggios that we hear cropping in solos, these arpeggio sequences, they have a way of speaking to us. They have a way of speaking to us in a way that maybe some other passages don't. And I think it's something to do with the simplicity of the arpeggio in terms of the musical information that's presented, because we only have 3 notes at a time. I'm going to give you another one. Another example might be something like this, which might be the solo from Burn by Deep Purple, which is that... and wherever it goes from there. So on and so forth. There are plenty of Ritchie Blackmore solos that use these examples too. But at the same time, there are loads of solos that use kind of arpeggio sequences that aren't maybe as complex as this. They don't have to be shreddy things. But these little 1-octave arpeggio groups, I guess, if that makes sense, have this real beautiful musical quality that we maybe don't get out of some of our other solos. So let's talk about building some, right? Now I've got a backing track queued up, and this backing track is in the key of E minor, but we're going to go looking for some triad arpeggios that we can find in E minor, because we'll stick with triads for the time being. We can expand this out and start to do some other stuff too, but we'll maybe stick with some triads. Oh, here we go, Marcin in with the Marcin in with the culture choice, Paganini's 24th Caprice. Very, very nice. Do I hear a fellow Germany? You did indeed, Gan Canny. You know what it is, right? There's a thing. Everywhere you go in the world, right, you meet a Geordie. It's one of those things. And even on the internet, it is true. So, Jason, great to have you on board. Thanks for joining us. So, anyway, right, so we've got this E minor backing track lined up. It's in the E natural minor, so it's E Aeolian. Let's talk a little bit about the chords that are available to us. So, if we go to the close-up cam real quick, what do we have? We have an E minor. That's a good shout. We have an F diminished that we could play. Again, this is one that we're maybe going to be a little bit more hesitant about using, but we can. Crops up in that final countdown solo very well. We have G major, A minor, B minor, C major, D major. So I'll run those again. E minor, F sharp something, G major, A minor, B minor, C major, D major. I feel like those C major and D major arpeggios are a really good place to start. So let's start throwing those together in some kind of sequence, right? And let's look for a few places we could play them. So what we could do is we could begin by taking that typical arpeggio sequence that we've done in most of those examples that you guys mentioned, which is going to be this one here. If we start with a C, what do we get? We get C, which is going to be on our 13th fret on the B string. We can play 12th fret and 15th fret on the high E string. So that gives us a C, an E, and a G. It's a root third fifth. It sounds like you're being beckoned onto an airplane. It's one of those things. We're passenger Jennison flying with KLM flight. It's terrible memories, right? I'll tell you about that in a bit, like being summoned to security baggage check because of a suspicious item in my luggage. It was our in-ear mixer, but it looked a bit like a bomb. Anyway, I'll tell you that story a bit later on because that's a funny story. But anyway, we have that one there. That's our C major. Now, the eagle-eyed among you will know that this comes from our C-shaped C major arpeggio, but we can stick with just this little triad shape for now. So if that's C major, it makes sense that this next little portion we have here, if we play the same thing up 2 frets, starting on this D note, we can get D major. Make sense? Let's talk about the little playing rudiment that we might use for this. Now, this is just one of the ways you can play this sort of stuff, but it crops up in guitar vocabulary all the time. So let's talk about the playing rudiment. What we might do is we might play this with a down pick, and then another down pick, and then an up pick. So we might go down, down, up. Now, the trick with this is to get your forearm oriented in such a way that it's just this side of the forearm that's touching the guitar, and this side is up in the air. What that's going to do is it's going to enable you to essentially pick with your wrist moving in a straight line, like that, or with a slight rotation, but then turn. When we do the up pick, it will naturally clear the strings and get us ready to go back with the down pick. That's the secret to making this sort of stuff work. If you want to go a bit further with it, we want to throw a 4th note in, we can do a pull-off. Let's try that little rudiment together. We're going to do it on our C, right? So this is going to be a little building block for what we're going to do going forward. So we have our C here. Let's try it with the 3 notes. Let's try it going C, E, G, like this. Let's try messing rhythmically with doing 3 notes versus 4 notes. Loads of fun to be had. Now, we're going to do a little bit of a jam together on this one, right? But what we're going to do is we're going to try highlighting the changes in this backing track, which go to C and momentarily to D using these arpeggios. So we're going to start in E minor. We'll use the E minor pentatonic scale, or somewhere up around this 12th fret region playing the natural minor scale. Wherever you want to be with that, that's totally fine. Here's our backing track. I'm going to take a turn, then I'm going to throw it up to you. Play my arpeggios. take a turn. So there's our E minor. The arpeggios are coming. Let's start with a C now. There we go. You can go to a D now if you want. And then back to our E minor. Let me show you again. Right, so here's E minor. I'll do a C arpeggio. Take a turn. Now this is pretty basic stuff, so the shredders in the audience are going to be going snooze, but that's okay, because we're going to start to expand on this as we go, and I want to make sure everybody gets something out of this. So if I go like this again, we take a turn. Now at the minute, what we've got is we've got this thing where we hit that C there, and we're lining these changes up with our arpeggio figures. But as we discovered last week, well, a few weeks ago actually, there's no rule that says we have to match our arpeggio with our chord changes. We can actually play any arpeggio from the appropriate scale that we're using at any time. So what we're going to do here is we're going to start to mix things up a little bit. So we're going to stick with this idea of playing this E minor backing track, but we're going to throw another arpeggio into the mix. So if we had this, and this one here, we can go to here and get an E arpeggio. Same thing up one octave, but we can drop our first finger down by 1 fret and get ourselves an E minor arpeggio. So what do we have? We have C is going to be 13 rather, and then 12, 15. D is going to be 15 and then 14, 17. And then E minor is going to be 17 and then 15, 19. Now, we can just play these like this, where we hit each change with its appropriate arpeggio. And that can sound fine, but we can also start to blend these, and we can start to play any arpeggio, out of this bunch at least, at any point in our track. So what we might get is something like this. I'll try and blend it in with some of the licks as well, with the pentatonic ideas. I'll take another pass. So with this, I want to ask you to take a turn. We're going to use those 3 arpeggios that we've just discussed. We'll improvise around with them to see what we can conjure up, and then we'll start to move them a little bit more. Right? You take a turn. Here we go. E minor, and you can blend E minor, C, and D in any way your heart sees fit. And you can also blend them in with some other licks too. It's nice. Now, it may feel a little restricted. You can keep going here. It may feel a little restricted because what we're dealing with here is just one arpeggio shape, but that's okay. We can start to expand this out as we go a bit further. Okay, let's back that out there. Let me know in the comments if that's working for you, or if you're conjuring up some cool stuff in your guitar playing that feels and sounds fun and sounds new maybe, or at least sounds melodic and familiar, because we're going to move a little step forward with this. So same deal here. What we can do is we can take the same idea, but here we can start to throw in some other arpeggio shapes that also give us the same notes. Let's talk about how we might expand our C and our D as a first port of call. So far we've got a C with our 1 octave, and then a D with our 1 octave here. Let's go back to C. We have C, we have E, we have G. I'm going to throw this E out there as a bit of a pivot tone. So right up until now rather, ahead is coming. Right up until now, we've had this E as the lowest note on our high string. But what if we made that the highest note on our high string, and we put our pinky finger there? Well, there's an E, and we know that C's and G's work. So we can find a C here, and we can find a G here, and that works for us too. Well, if that's a C, it makes sense that this would be a D. So we have C, which will be 8, 8, 12, same rudiment works. D would be 10, 10, 14. Same thing again would be here, and here. And there's our E minor. So what do we get if we string those together? Well, we might get something like this. Which I think sounds really cool. Let's try the other direction. Now, you guys hear me play this sort of thing all the time, but can you hear how melodic and how musical that sounds? Through an E minor in at the end. We'll talk about that. And so on. Now, that E minor is going to be quite easy to find, but you can hear how musical that is. Let's just throw the E minor into there, and then we'll start to take some turns improvising with this. So, we figured out that this is a C. This is a D. Well, E minor, we can find here. We can play 12, 12, that's B, E. We can play a G on top like this. Now, this gives us two places to play each of these arpeggios, but notably, it also gives us a place where these start to overlap. Which is something we're going to take a look at in a second. So we have this here. And we're starting to get some really cool musical results. So with these shapes in mind, let's do a little bit of back and forward. A bit of back and forward together. So I'm going to begin with my C, my D, my other C, my other D, and then I'll try and hit this E minor and see what happens. So I'm going to start here. You take a turn, and let's see what we get. Let's see what we conjure up with this. Because as soon as we start to introduce more positions with this, it starts to get a little bit more interesting. We've got more options at our disposal. I'll go like this. You take a turn. We'll talk about some more cool arpeggio solos in a minute, by the way, because there's some really good ones you guys didn't mention that we'll get into in a minute. Now that sounds, to me, very musical, very, very interesting, but what if we wanted to take this a wee little step further? So, now, let's go a little step further with this in terms of range. But first of all, before we do, let's talk about some other arpeggio solos that we didn't mention. Some other arpeggio bits and bobs. So we talked about our favorite arpeggio solos. We didn't mention probably the most famous arpeggio solo of all time, which is Eruption. Now, we don't necessarily think about Eruption as arpeggios because it's tapping, isn't it? Isn't arpeggios what happens when you sweep? Well, no. We've talked about this before. I mean, you guys know this, but just in case anybody's watching who may be new to this idea, with guitar, we tend to conflate the word arpeggio with the word sweep, but it's not necessarily the case. You can sweep and play scales, and you can play arpeggios without sweeping. That's just a convenient way of playing one note per string, which is how we, how we tend to play our arpeggios because of the way the instrument is tuned. It just makes it convenient. And if you think about those old arpeggio songs, like House of the Rising Sun, that... Oh, turn it up until the noise gate bites. those great old songs that were arpeggios and had this really surprisingly challenging sweep in it. That's kind of what we're talking about. Daryl Queen with the win says almost all the old school taps are arps for sure. So tapping is, in essence, it's a way of playing hammer-ons with the right hand. That's all it is. We play hammer-ons and pull-offs with this hand. Enables us to reach notes that we couldn't reach otherwise, unless you're Jakey Lee and you can do this. Big hands, right? And I'm a tall guy, and Jake is not a very tall fella. I don't know what he did to condition his hands to do that, but maybe, as Craig mentioned, he's got his thumb round. That seems like the sort of thing Jake would do. He's an improbable guitar player with just outrageous technique that people don't give the due. But even still, if we take that classic Van Halen tapping pattern, hopefully this won't get us copyright struck, because it did last time, but even still, this... all that stuff is arpeggios, right? It's arpeggios, 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 right? So what do we get? C sharp minor, A major, I guess you could call this like, it's kind of a diminished. I tend to think about it as being a B7 without the B, which leads us into the E, so on and so forth, right? But if you also think about things like the John Sykes solo from Cold Sweat, which was this, what the hell did he play again? It's the... whatever it was. All arpeggios, right? These are all arpeggio lines. We can use tapping to create some really cool and interesting arpeggio lines, and it doesn't have to be fast, because again, there are no rules that say tapping equals fast. John Mayer has been demonstrating this to us over the last few years, and we see all these blues cats playing like tapping licks now, even though there's not a lot of like shred tapping going on. It's not what it's about. It's just a way of reaching notes that you can't reach with your other hand. So let's talk about how we might do these in these phrases. Cold Sweat, it's a great solo, right? Really, really great solo. Oh, here's another one, right? Crazy Train. Why didn't we talk about Crazy Train as a fantastic arpeggio? They're all over the place, right? They're all over the place. But anyway, went Greg Howe there. A little bit, maybe. So anyway, oh, great story here, yeah. The famous Randy Rhoads Flying High Again tapping that George Lynch showed him. Poor George, he didn't get his due with that Aussie gig. He auditioned before Randy's death and also after Randy's sad passing. Didn't get the gig ahead of time, despite being one of the, in my opinion, the best players of the era. But it went to Jake, and Jake's the man. So anyway, what were we talking about here? So we're talking about Cold Sweat. That is a real athletic solo, if you've ever tried to play it, right? That is a feat of fretboard athleticism. John Sykes had like Usain Bolt for hands. I don't know what's going on there, right? That's a level of like physicality that's really, really tough. What else do we have? Tornado of Souls. Again, how did we fail? How did we fail to do that one? We're actually going to get a little bit Tornado of Soulsy in a minute, because we're going to start throwing some other stuff in there. I don't want to ramble too long because we'll miss the boat with the cool stuff. So anyway, if we start to incorporate some tapping into this, right, what do we get? Well, obvious places we can start to tap. Or we can start to tap the top end of each arpeggio, and we can start to tap the next note up. This presents a problem for us when we start playing these lines, because it's very hard to sound that note when it's time to get there. Same here. That becomes quite challenging. Now, some inventive guitar players have come up with some solutions to this that I'm going to show you in a minute, but these ones, these are really easy. So if we take our C, which was this, and our D here, We can start to throw some taps on top, and suddenly we're dealing with all manner of shreddy goodness. And it's actually not that hard to carry off, but it also gives us a very easy way of manipulating the upper extensions in the arpeggio, because we don't just need to tap the notes of the arpeggio. We can tap anything that's in our scale. We've got all sorts of good stuff at our disposal. Let's talk very quickly about this little point here, right? This little point here where we go, we have this weird little movement, because there's some inventive solutions to this, right? So this tap here sounds great, not the easiest to go here. All manner of shreddy goodness t-shirts. Let's make that happen. I feel like I've got enough stupid catchphrases to put on t-shirts. I would wear that t-shirt for sure, right? GI merch. I feel like we should do it. All manner of shreddy goodness. So anyway, the inventive solution to this, instead of going here, is to find this G note with another finger that we're not currently using. And an easy place to get it is this 12th fret on the G string, which is this, right here, this. Now this may be the start of something familiar for you guys. And we're into the Nuno Betancourt arpeggio, which is right here. Now we don't need to go too far down that road, but with a little bit of cheeky string skipping, we've got a load of cool sounding arpeggios at our disposal. But that's not the only place we can move these. So far, oh, my orange light is gone. Oh, there you go, never mind, we're left with purple. That's fine, purple's important. I was on the purple camera for a little while, and then the orange light's gone, but that's fine, I'll maybe put it on charge, and maybe we'll get it back for the Q&A, who knows. But the next thing we can start to do this is where this starts to get really fun, is we can also take these ideas and start to move them in octaves. So, very quickly, let me show you this, right? So this idea here, this is our C arpeggio that we discussed here. What if we took this C note and moved it down to this C note down an octave? We can play exactly the same shape. That's another octave down, doing exactly the same thing. This is a 3-octave C major arpeggio. But it's not really, because what it is 3 1-octave C major arpeggios that we're stringing together. But watch this. When I play this middle one, what's happened here? Well, my pinky finger is where it was when we did this. So what if we took this idea and this idea, suddenly we've got almost unlimited sequencing opportunities, which sounds really, really great. So what do we get? Just throw it on the backing track. Let's do a progression. Let's go from one to the other. Let's start with our E minor. start to put them together in octaves. Let's start to incorporate some tapping. Possibilities become endless. Now, these are just a few of the ways that you might scam with this stuff. And it's all being based around just 3 triads, right? But imagine if you were to open this line of thinking up to all of the arpeggios that you now know you can use in, well, any given context, but in this case in E minor. Well, we might get something like this. This is where these kind of lines come from. These kind of very... that we're doing here, just to show you where this can go. A lot of that stuff is these sort of arpeggio chains that we've been talking about, but the just kind of like laid out in different octaves, different pairs of strings, etc., and just ones that I've experimented with for a very long time. So I found these little kind of pathways through this sort of thing. That is purely to demonstrate to you how far this sort of thing goes. But we're using all manner of stuff there. So we've got some of the sus4 arpeggios we talked about, some arpeggio extensions. So for example, we have that lovely Lydian arpeggio that we've discussed a few times, etc., etc., etc. So anyway, listen, we've run out of time to discuss this, guys, because I want to get into your questions. So if we have any questions that you want to get in at the last minute, don't forget, drop them down below. It's not too late to go over the Q&A stuff. So if you got questions, I'd love to hear from you. We already have some very good ones we're going to get into, but I'm going to give you a quick second to get your questions in. If you want a little bit of time, if you want a little bit of help with the technical aspect of this, a fun place to begin is, of course, Picking Strategies Part 1, which is one of the GI Plus courses that I'm most proud of. I think it's great. It is a little bit like this, if I can find it. I don't know where it's gone. Here we go. Yeah, this is Picking Strategies Part 1. Take a look at this. When we come back, we'll answer your questions. Does your picking feel uncoordinated and sometimes you miss notes or fluff transitions from string to string, maybe a little bit like this? When in reality what you want is smooth and easy and transparent feeling picking, a bit like this. Or maybe you've been sold on the idea that there's one specific way that you have to pick on the guitar and everything else is wrong, but that particular cookie cutter approach just doesn't work for you. It feels unnatural. It almost feels like you're fighting your own body to try and make it work. Well, Picking Strategies Part 1 is the course for you. In this course, we explore the many different ways that you can form a full and complete and comprehensive picking approach by examining the various strategies used by some of the greatest pickers of all time. And there are a whole bunch of strategies out there, and I guarantee there is one that is going to work for your preferred picking mechanics, the way you prefer to stand or sit with the guitar, the type of guitar you play, the type of music you play. There is a strategy for you. We're going to explore all of them, and I'm going to show you how you can take a single solo study
and play every line within it using all of the 6 picking strategies that we look at in this course. And of course, this entire course is available as part of your GI Plus membership, so if you're not signed up already, what better excuse do you need to sign up today?
So there you go, guys. That's a look at picking strategies. It's our comprehensive picking course, gonna help you with your arpeggios, etc., etc., etc. So anyway, listen. Here we go. Oh no! I'm trying to sign up for All Access, but there's a huge Marshall advert blocking the screen. I can't fill in the form. Dude, send us an email. We'll get you sorted out. Appreciate that. So listen, but hey, you know, if you feel like signing up, that would be wicked, right? It helps us keep the lights on. I don't think you'll regret it. So anyway, listen, my guitarist hit the keyboard 3 times during this lesson and closed me out of the chat. Oh no, dude, sorry to hear that, man. I'm familiar with this, right? I keep doing this thing on these streams where I swipe myself out of the the broadcast on my Magic Mouse, and it's kind of hilarious, but one of those things. Anyway, so listen, let's get stuck in with the Q&A. We had a really great question come in, or really great comment at least come in from our friend Darryl Queen, which is, your apparent lack of tension in your fretting hand is something I'm striving for. So here's an interesting thing with that. As far as the tension thing goes, I totally get you here, because tension is one of those kind of like funny things when it comes to playing the guitar, where if you have 0 tension, you won't make a note. You won't be able to make a note, but it's something that can quickly build into a bit of a hurdle, let's say, a bit of an obstacle, when you start to, you know, use a lot of tension, certainly in your left hand at least, for fretting notes and for all that sort of thing. A couple of ways I feel like you can deal with this, right? I feel it's a very good question, and one that we've answered a long while ago on the stream, and I feel like it definitely bears repeating. So let's get into that a little bit more deeply. So anyway, left hand tension, all this sort of thing. So few points that I like to make for this. First things first is, when it comes to minimizing tension, we have to make sure we can still produce notes, because that's what we're here to do. Ultimately, we're not here just to touch the guitar. We're here to make notes. So we can do a few things to make our technique more efficient. First thing we can do is we can make sure that we're using the hardest part of the finger, let's say. Now, the analogy I use for this is, if I said to you, hey, I need you to go and hang some paintings for me, and you just knock some nails into the wall so we can do it. And I gave you the option of using a hammer to knock the nails in, or I said, or you can use this piece of cooked spaghetti to knock the nail in. Which one do you prefer? Well, you're obviously going to choose the hammer, apart from the fact that spaghetti would be quite funny, and you could try that for a little while. It'd be great, but then you get bored and you'd go, right, now I want a hammer now. Let's do it with a hammer. The reason we choose the hammer is able to transfer the force from the muscles of our arm and our wrist into the nail much more effectively, because it is rigid and it has a bit of weight to it. Now, this doesn't mean that your finger should be rigid, but it means that you should probably use the part of the finger that is the hardest, and for most people, that's the bone. Now, what this doesn't mean, I'll show you this close up, what it doesn't mean is to get right up on the absolute tippy tip of your finger, but what it means is that the bone, the very tip of the bone, should be the bit that is contacting the string, because that's going to most efficiently transfer the force from the hand into your string. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to press down really hard on the string, and then I'm going to show you this. Right, I'm going to show you this real quick. I'll just create a line in my finger so you can see where it is. So if you take a look at that middle finger very quickly, you can see where that line is. It's not on the tip, but it's close. So it's not right there. It's more like here. Now, for me, that's what happens when the bone of my finger is on the string. Right now, what this also does, if we have a little bit of extra real estate there, it enables us to do a more efficient pull-off. So the more efficient pull-off is going to be a brushing type movement. We talked about this before, where instead of plucking the notes like that, we just need to use the friction of our skin to brush the note, almost like doing this, just brushing the note with the left hand. Now, bone on string contact and pull-off brush will go a long way towards making your fretting hand less tense and more efficient. But another thing we need to pay attention to is the thumb, because the thumb can be a real generator of tension here, right? If we start to press the thumb into the back of the neck and press really, really hard with the thumb, that, well, let's just do it real quick, right? If you have your guitar, just push your thumb really hard into the back of the neck and see what happens. See what happens to your left hand. Your left hand fingers start to get pretty tight, right? Whereas by contrast, if we use the thumb just as something that we lightly touch the back of the neck with, is the word I'm trying to say, lightly touch the back of the neck, we use it more as kind of, we've used this term before, this proprioceptive cue, just a way of feeling where the fretboard is in relation to your fingers, rather than something that you squeeze with. Now, sometimes you'll need to do that if you're playing a guitar with terrible setup, but we'll get to that. Setup's another important thing. Having a guitar that's set up to play well is a big deal. But yeah, a light touch with the thumb, bone on string, and then the same deal with this brush pull off. That's going to go a long way to making you like super efficient. But another thing that's going to help with this very quickly is this is a cue that I use all the time in my head, is that when we fret, I need to remind myself of this, the action of fretting is not the action of pushing the finger onto the string. That's not what makes the fretted note sound. It's not the action of putting the finger on the string, it's the action of putting the string onto the fret. I'll say that again. It's not putting the finger on the string, it's putting the string onto the fret. That is the thing that makes the sound. Case in point, if I press here, not much of a note. You could say, well, that's really high. Well, what about here? Sort of a harmonic-ish, kind of nothing. What if I press really hard? Nothing. But if I touch really lightly here and bring this string into contact with the fret, we get a note. What if I press harder? Does the note get any better? Nope. So what we can do is we can calibrate ourselves to have the least amount of fretting pressure that we need and just get used to what that feels like, if that makes any sense. So there's a psychological aspect to this too. For those brushes, that thumb lightness, if that makes sense, the bone touch, and also the cue that we're just bringing the string onto the fret rather than bringing the finger onto the string, those are all things that will really help your fretboard, fretting hand lightness, fretting hand efficiency, if you want to call it that. Another thing is to make sure you lighten up your pick grip, because you can still pick hard, but lighten up the pick grip, because if you grip the pick hard, this hand wants to grip hard too. It's one of those things. So anyway, another thing, this is, I guess, another psychological element to this as well, is, or more of a philosophical element, which we'd like to end these lessons on, is that the guitar is not a strength sport. We, as guitar players, have this terrible habit of doing essentially like guitar willy measuring, if that makes sense. So, you know, what we do is we measure our manliness, because it's normally men that do this. Women who play guitar tend not to do this for whatever reason. We tend to measure our manliness about how hard our guitar is to play. Oh, my guitar's got 12s on, because Stevie Ray Vaughan once did it. And my action is really high. And it's like, well, why? Like, who cares? You know, you won't see, you know, like playing Stevie Ray Vaughan's Strat as an event in World's Strongest Man, right? There are times for strength sports. There are times for where strength is important. I compete in a strength sport, right? I'm a pretty bang average powerlifter, right? Not very good, but I'm not very bad either. I'm kind of somewhere just sitting in that sort of bang average kind of place, which I'm fine with, right? I know what strength sports are about. And this ain't it, right? This is not the thing. So I think jettisoning that mentality of the guitar is some kind of macho pursuit and you got to hit it really hard and you got to play a really, really tough guitar because I'm a big tough guy. Like, go and take that out in the gym if you have to. The guitar is not the place for that because it's not going to bring you any happiness, right? It's not going to make you a better guitar player. I'm not suggesting that you guys do this, but there are lots of guitar players out there that do that, and you are free to ignore the advice of anybody who gives you this kind of like spiel about like, oh, well, you know, if the guitar is harder to play, that makes it better. It's like, does it though? Or maybe you should just play better. You know, I don't know. It's one of those things. So anyway, listen, that's some philosophy and all that sort of stuff. Timothy Appling has come through with the answer to the question earlier on. I noticed 10s being standard in the last decade. I learned on my dad's Martin acoustic with 12 gauges. That's hard to play for sure. Then came my first electric with 9s, and I thought I was in heaven. 9s are a great gauge. I played 10s for a long time because review guitars come in with 10s, and I have to be able to play on 10s. Ultimately, that's it. I don't really have a strong preference, but I've got 9s on this guitar right now, and it feels blimmin' great and sounds fantastic too. You go as well. People playing guitar at the knees place. Knees place injected the measuring the Willie mentality. We're talking about this guy. Yeah, look how low my guitar is. I came up in the early 2000s, and that was the thing. Like, how low could you get it? I once had a bass player, a friend of mine, who's a really great dude, not a bad guy at all, but he used to brag that he could only reach the E and A strings on his bass with his right hand, and if he had to play anything on the D or G strings, he had to bend down so far that the bass was on the floor and he could reach the highest 2 strings, and he thought it was cool. And I'm like, well, hey, you're allowed to like that. Everyone's allowed to like different things. I think it's dumb, but you know, you might think I'm dumb, and that's okay too. Daryl Queen, I play mostly 10s, mostly rock 10s with a lowish action, but on my semi-hollow I do play 11 flats. I think that's okay. This is not me saying that if you play 10s you shouldn't. Like, play what you like, but ultimately it's about playing something that works and having a setup that works. We like that lowish action because the setup is there to serve you as the player. You are there to serve. The guitar is not there to serve. You're not there to serve the guitar. The guitar is there to serve you. You are the thing that makes the music. Without you, the guitar is merely an albeit very attractive inert object. So make the guitar do what it is that you want to do with it. Anyway, philosophy aside, it was actually a bad attempt at a witty response to his Willie analogy. You know, what can I say, right? How have we got into Willie waving on this? But it's one of those things. Let's make the guitar a slightly less silly macho place. We'll leave that for the gym, which is where I'm going to go now. So anyway, listen, I'm going to see you guys a little bit later on. Thank you so much for having us. My name's Nick Jennison for Guitar Interactive GI+. Go to this URL if you want to help us keep the lights on. You can go get more lessons. Your subscriptions really do help. They enable us to keep doing these streams. And speaking of doing these streams, I'm going to see you guys next week. Let's play some more arpeggios with some other stuff too. For the time being, see you guys later. My name's Nick Jennison, and it's a pleasure to introduce to you GI+, the brand new lesson platform brought to you by Guitar Interactive. We've assembled a team of the best players and educators in the world to bring you exclusive lessons covering everything from metal to blues to fusion and everything in between.
Want to level up your shred chops? Check out How to Play Fast by Andy James. Or how about Sweet Picking with Rick Graham? Or maybe country's more your bag? Well, how about a full-length exclusive country guitar course from Andy Wood? Interested in learning how to play over changes? Well, members get access to hours of exclusive lessons from fusion maestro Tom Quayle. Or maybe you want your playing to sound more soulful? Well, who better than Chris Buck to show you how it's done? Or perhaps you want to learn the secrets of the masters. Well, members get access to over 60 feature-length tech sessions where our tutors painstakingly decode the styles of players like David Gilmour, Eddie Van Halen, John Petrucci, Larry Carlton, Slash, Tosin Abasi, Paul Gilbert, and many more. You get all this along with exclusive live webinars, free backing tracks, competitions, and so much more. So what are you waiting for? Sign up for GI Plus today.